Our picture of the past is built on fragments. We piece together broken walls, faded texts, and ancient art to guess what a lost city truly looked like. But what if we found the original blueprint? Across the globe, archaeologists have uncovered entire city plans perfectly preserved beneath the soil, and these buried maps have shattered our oldest assumptions. This journey explores 25 of those revolutionary discoveries. By the end, you will see how each complete city plan forced experts to rewrite history, revealing urban life, social order, and technological genius we never knew existed. How did a city without a single street function? What does a perfectly circular capital reveal about an empire's vision? We are about to travel across continents and through cities to the medieval world, guided by these forgotten maps. What do you think is the most surprising thing a city plan can tell us about the people who built it? The first blueprint to rewrite our story came not from a grand empire, but from a quiet mound in central Turkey. For decades, archaeologists excavated the site of Çatalhöyük, and what they uncovered was a city that defied every expectation. Dating back over 9,000 years, this was one of the world's first large settlements, a true proto-city. Yet when researchers finally pieced together its layout, they found a plan that seemed to make no sense. There were no streets, there were no alleys. There was no central plaza. Instead, they discovered a single, massive, interconnected hive of mud brick houses, each one sharing walls with its neighbors. Built so close together, they formed a single, solid architectural mass. The only way to move through this city of perhaps 8,000 people was by walking across its rooftops. Wooden ladders descended from openings in the roofs down into the individual homes below. Life unfolded in these sunken rooms, which served as kitchens, workshops, and sacred spaces all at once. The entire social model was inverted. Instead of public life happening in shared streets and squares, it was intensely private, focused within the household. Rituals, artwork depicting powerful animals, and even the resting places of family members were all contained within the home itself. This labyrinthine plan shattered the long-held assumption that urban life, by its very definition, required defined streets and communal gathering points. Çatalhöyük revealed a different path, a unique social experiment in ultra-dense living built on household units and rooftop pathways. It proved the Neolithic revolution was not a single event with one blueprint, but a fascinating era of diverse and ingenious urban experiments. This rooftop world of Çatalhöyük was a marvel of its age, but it represented only one possible answer to a fundamental question: how do you build a city that lasts? 1,000 miles to the east and several thousand years later, another civilization provided a radically different and shockingly modern answer. When archaeologists first began excavating the dusty plains of modern-day Pakistan and India in the 1920s, they were completely unprepared for what they found. The cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, part of the vast Indus Valley civilization, were laid out with a precision that seemed to defy their 4,000-year-old age. Their plans revealed not organic growth but meticulous, centralized design. Streets ran in perfect north-south and east-west grids, intersecting at right angles to form orderly city blocks. This was urban planning on an unprecedented scale for the Bronze Age, a concept of order that would not be seen again in the region for millennia, but the true genius was hidden beneath the streets. The city plans exposed the world's first known sophisticated urban sanitation system. Almost every house had its own bathing area and a dedicated waste disposal chute. These chutes connected to a city-wide network of covered brick drains that ran beneath the streets, channeling wastewater away from homes and into larger sewer mains. Manholes with removable stone covers allowed for regular maintenance. This obsession with cleanliness and water management extended to public facilities, with elaborate great baths likely used for ritual purification. Even the bricks themselves told a story of central authority. They were fired to a standardized ratio, perfectly uniform across hundreds of miles, suggesting a powerful, coordinating administration that could enforce such building codes. For archaeologists of the time, these discoveries were a profound shock. The prevailing view had been that early civilizations in South Asia were less advanced than their contemporaries in Mesopotamia and Egypt. The Indus Valley city plans demolished that assumption overnight. They revealed a society that was not only technologically brilliant, but also remarkably egalitarian in its urban vision. There were no monumental palaces or temples towering over slums. Instead, the careful grid and the universal access to water and drainage suggested a civic priority on collective well-being and hygiene. This was a lost blueprint for a peaceful, orderly, and astonishingly clean urban life, a vision so complete it forced the entire world to revise its understanding of what a Bronze Age civilization could achieve. Yet the rigid, sanitary order of the Indus Valley presents another question entirely. What happens when a city plan is not designed for efficiency, but for something more fluid and mysterious? The answer lies on the sun-drenched island of Crete. At the dawn of the 20th century, the English archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began to peel back the earth at a site called Knossos. What he uncovered was not a city of streets, but a single, breathtaking architectural organism, a palace so vast and labyrinthine it would birth the legend of the Minotaur. The plan of the Palace of Knossos was a revelation, a multi-story complex sprawling over 20,000 square meters, built around a series of open central courtyards. This was not a fortified citadel meant for defense. Its walls were adorned with vibrant frescoes of leaping dolphins, graceful priestesses, and ceremonial processions, not scenes of battle. The layout itself seemed to celebrate movement and light. A sophisticated system of light wells and colonnaded porticos channeled the Aegean sun deep into the building's heart. Intricate corridors snaked through the structure, connecting grand staircases, royal apartments, workshops, and shrines in a seemingly bewildering maze. But within this artistic flourish was astonishing practicality. Evans uncovered long, narrow rooms lined with massive clay storage jars called pithoi. These were the palace's economic engines, its storage magazines holding olive oil, grain, and wine, the wealth of the kingdom. The entire plan spoke of a civilization, now called Minoan, that was confident, maritime, and culturally radiant. Its cities were not clustered for protection, but spread out, with these sprawling palatial complexes acting as the administrative, religious, and economic hubs for the surrounding communities. For archaeologists, this was a direct challenge to the established narrative of the Aegean Bronze Age. The prevailing view had been that this era was merely a rough, violent prelude to the warlike city-states of Mycenaean Greece, with their heavy fortification walls and warrior tombs. Knossos and the other Minoan palaces presented a completely different model, a thalassocracy, a sea-based empire whose power was projected through trade, artistry, and sophisticated administration, not sheer military force. The very openness of its plan, its focus on beauty and commerce over defense, forced a dramatic rewrite. It revealed a lost golden age where the blueprint for civilization was drawn not with battlements, but with paintbrushes and shipping ledgers, a sophisticated society that thrived for centuries on its own unique and peaceful terms. But a blueprint for peace and beauty is only one side of the coin. What happens when a city is built not for living, but for a single, monumental purpose? The answer lies in the desert sands near the pyramids of Egypt. While the tombs of pharaohs have always captured our imagination, the lives of the people who built them remained a mystery. That changed with the discovery of a small, forgotten town called Kahun. built around 1850 BC to house the laborers and officials working on the pyramid of Pharaoh Senusret II. Kahun is the world's oldest known fully planned town. Its layout was a revelation of a different kind. It was not an organic settlement. It was a perfect rectangle enclosed by a thick wall and divided by a single, dead-straight main street running north to south. On either side of this street, smaller lanes ran at perfect right angles, creating a rigid grid of identical city blocks. This geometric precision was not for artistic flourish. It was for control. The houses themselves told a stark story of social division. On the west side of the main street stood large, comfortable villas with multiple rooms and private courtyards, homes for the priests, scribes, and overseers. On the east side, cramped rows of identical, small mud brick houses were packed tightly together, each with just a few rooms. These were the dwellings of the skilled artisans and laborers. The entire town was a machine designed to house a temporary workforce with maximum efficiency and strict social segregation. Yet, even in this rigidly controlled environment, there was evidence of advanced planning. Archaeologists found a sophisticated drainage system running beneath the streets, with limestone channels to manage waste and rainwater. This detail proved the state invested significant resources in the workers' basic well-being, likely to maintain a healthy, functional workforce. For historians, Kahun was a seismic shift. Before its discovery, our view of Old Kingdom Egypt was dominated by temples, tombs, and the divine pharaoh. Kahun provided the first clear, physical blueprint of state-organized labor and social hierarchy in daily life. It moved the narrative beyond kings and gods to reveal the intricate, practical machinery of the state, showing how a civilization marshaled its human resources to achieve the impossible. This planned community proved the pyramids were not built by enslaved masses, as old tales suggested, but by a highly organized, stratified society where your address was dictated by your role in the grandest project of the age. The rigid, functional grid of Kahun was a blueprint for state control, but halfway across the world, another city plan emerged that spoke of a different kind of power entirely. For centuries, the ruins of Teotihuacan in central Mexico lay shrouded in mystery, their original name lost to time. When archaeologists finally began to map its colossal scale, they uncovered a plan of such staggering ambition and rigid order that it forced a complete rethink of how pre-Columbian societies were organized. The city was anchored by the Avenue of the Dead, a central axis over 2 miles long, running precisely 15.5 degrees east of true north. This was not a winding path, it was a monumental straight line of sight, flanked by towering pyramids like the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, creating a processional way of breathtaking scale. But the true revelation was not just the monuments, it was the thousands of residential blocks that spread out from this axis in a near-perfect grid. These were not simple huts, they were standardized apartment compounds, large, single-story complexes built around central courtyards, housing multiple families. Each compound was a self-contained unit with its own kitchens, shrines, and workshops, suggesting a highly organized, multi-ethnic population living in distinct neighborhoods. The entire city, housing over 100,000 people at its peak, was laid out with an impersonal, geometric precision that rivaled the Indus Valley. This meticulous, large-scale planning pointed to a form of governance that left archaeologists stunned. Unlike the Maya cities to the south, with their carvings glorifying individual kings, Teotihuacan yielded almost no depictions of a single, supreme ruler. No grand royal palaces were found. Instead, the evidence suggested a collective, possibly corporate form of leadership, perhaps a council of powerful families or priests who governed through shared ideology rather than personal dynastic rule. The city itself was the monument, its strict orthogonal plan a physical manifestation of a shared cosmic order and social harmony. This discovery was a direct challenge to a long-held assumption that all ancient American civilizations were fundamentally theocratic kingdoms ruled by god-kings. Teotihuacan presented a radical alternative, a vast, impersonal urban machine that flourished for centuries under a different social contract, one where the blueprint for power was etched not into the face of a king, but into the very streets and walls of the city itself. Teotihuacan's anonymous, gridlocked power was a marvel of the ancient world, but it would be eclipsed by a city whose plan was an empire's beating heart. Centuries later and across the Pacific, the Tang dynasty capital of Chang'an rose as the largest, most meticulously ordered city on Earth. Its excavated blueprint is a masterclass in imperial ambition, a vast, walled rectangle stretching over 30 square miles, laid out with a symmetry so perfect it feels almost mathematical. The entire metropolis was a colossal grid, crisscrossed by over 110 wide, arrow-straight avenues that divided the city into 108 walled and gated wards. This was not just urban planning, it was cosmic ordering. The layout mirrored the ancient Chinese belief in a square earth beneath a round heaven, with the emperor's palace complex at the north, the symbolic apex of power, aligning the city with the very axis of the universe. Each ward had a specific state-mandated purpose. There were two enormous walled market wards, one in the east and one in the west, where trade was strictly controlled and confined. Administrative wards housed government bureaus, while separate residential wards for nobles, officials, and commoners enforced a rigid social hierarchy. After sunset, the massive gates of each ward were locked, turning the city into a collection of isolated cells under strict curfew. For archaeologists, uncovering this plan was a revelation of staggering scale and control. At its peak in the 8th century, over 1 million people lived within this ordered maze, a population no European city would reach for nearly 1,000 years. The sheer logistics of managing such a place, from its water supply and granaries to its night watchmen and courier stations, spoke of a bureaucratic machinery of unimaginable sophistication. This single city plan fundamentally rewrote the narrative of medieval urbanism. While contemporaries in Europe were building cramped, winding towns around cathedrals and castles, Chang'an presented a vision of urban life as an instrument of state power, a physical manifestation of imperial law and cosmological harmony. It proved that the height of medieval planning and administrative genius was not found in the rising cities of the West, but in a capital where every street, every wall, and every gate was a deliberate stroke in a grand imperial design. Chang'an's imperial grid was a testament to human ambition, yet across the world, another civilization was building a monument of earth that spoke a different language of power. While the Tang dynasty perfected the walled ward in the fertile floodplain of the Mississippi River, a city rose from the soil itself. For generations, the great mounds of Cahokia were seen as little more than curious hills, the remnants of scattered, primitive villages. That assumption collapsed when archaeologists began to see not just individual mounds, but the grand design that connected them all. At the heart of this plan stood Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet high, the largest pre-Columbian earthwork north of Mexico. It was not an isolated monument. It was the anchor of a vast, precisely arranged ceremonial landscape. A grand plaza, larger than 35 football fields, stretched out before it, flanked by over 120 smaller mounds arranged in precise geometric patterns. These mounds were not random piles of dirt. They were platforms for the homes of elites, foundations for important temples, and markers for sacred boundaries, creating a three-dimensional map of social and spiritual order. The true stroke of genius, however, was discovered in the 1960s. Archaeologists found a series of large, circular patterns of post holes to the west of Monk's Mound. These were the remains of massive wooden circles, now called wood henges. The most famous of these consisted of 48 evenly spaced cedar posts. Researchers realized these posts were not a fence. They were a sophisticated astronomical calendar. On the equinoxes, an observer standing at the center of the circle would see the sun rise directly over Monk's Mound, perfectly aligned with a key post. Other posts marked the solstice sunrises and sunsets. This meant the entire city, from its central pyramid to its wooden observatory, was laid out as a single, integrated cosmic clock. This revelation was transformative. The Cahokia plan proved this was not a loose collection of tribes, but a centrally planned, hierarchical metropolis that at its peak around 1050 AD rivaled contemporary London in size. The coordinated labor required to move millions of baskets of earth, the precise astronomical knowledge encoded in the landscape, and the clear social stratification shown in mound placement all spoke of a complex, sophisticated culture. It completely overturned the outdated stereotype of pre-Columbian North America as a land of simple, nomadic hunter-gatherers. Cahokia's blueprint, written in earth and aligned with the heavens, forced a dramatic rewrite. It revealed a powerful, visionary Mississippian civilization that engineered its environment on a monumental scale, building a city that was both a capital of people and a temple to the sun. While Cahokia aligned its earthworks with the sun, another civilization chose a more perfect form to symbolize its cosmic vision. In the year 762, the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mansur stood on the banks of the Tigris River and envisioned a city unlike any other. He did not sketch a grid or a defensive hilltop. He drew a perfect circle. This was Madinat al-Salam, the city of peace, better known to history as the original round city of Baghdad. For centuries, its legendary form was known only from texts, a story that seemed almost too ideal to be true. Then, modern archaeology and aerial surveys revealed the ghostly outline beneath the modern metropolis, confirming the ancient accounts in stunning detail. The city was a geometric manifesto. 4 massive concentric rings of formidable brick walls protected its heart. From the central palace and grand mosque, 4 colossal avenues radiated outward like spokes on a wheel, each gate perfectly aligned to a cardinal direction. Between these main arteries, a network of smaller radial streets and concentric ring roads created a precise, segmented pattern, dividing the city into administrative and residential quarters. This was not an organic settlement that grew over time. It was a complete urban idea, built from scratch in just 4 years by thousands of architects, engineers, and laborers. The circular plan was a profound fusion of influences and meaning. It drew from ancient Persian royal cities and their symbolic cosmology, representing the universe with the Caliph, God's deputy on earth, at its absolute center. The radial design was also brutally practical, allowing troops to move swiftly from the center to any point on the perimeter in case of attack, and ensuring the Caliph's authority was the literal focal point of all civic life. For historians, this excavated blueprint was a revelation that forced a dramatic shift in perspective. The common assumption had been that early Islamic cities grew somewhat haphazardly around a central mosque and marketplace. Baghdad's perfect circle shattered that notion. It proved that from its very inception, Islamic urbanism could be an act of high intellectual and political theater, a deliberate statement of universal order and absolute power carved into the landscape. This was not mere urban growth, it was the birth of an ideal city, a geometric declaration that the new Abbasid dynasty was the axis around which the entire world would turn. Baghdad's perfect circle was a declaration of imperial order, but not all great cities were born from a single ruler's command. Some grew from the chaotic energy of commerce, and none did so more dramatically than a windswept island in a Swedish lake. For centuries, the Vikings were remembered in history as fearsome raiders. their story written in the ashes of monasteries. But then, on the island of Birka in Lake Meleron, archaeologists uncovered the buried plan of Birka, and an entirely different chapter began. This was not a scattered village of seasonal raiders. It was a densely packed, meticulously organized trading metropolis, one of the first true urban centers in all of Scandinavia. Its layout was a masterclass in practical planning. 3 main harbors, each carved into the island's shoreline, served specific types of vessels, from local fishing boats to deep-sea merchant knars arriving from across Europe and the East. A massive defensive ring fort, or borg, stood on a high promontory, its earthen ramparts offering refuge for the town's population in times of threat. Between the fort and the harbors lay a grid-like arrangement of wooden plots, each one a hive of activity. Specialist workshops for blacksmiths, bead makers, glassworkers, and amber carvers were identified by the debris left behind. The homes of merchants and craftsmen stood beside their places of work. Beyond the bustling town, over 3,000 burial mounds dotted the surrounding landscape, a silent city of the dead that spoke volumes about the living. These were not simple graves. They contained goods from across the known world: silver dirhams from the Abbasid Caliphate, silks from Byzantium, Frankish glass, and Rhenish pottery. The plan of Birka, from its specialized harbors to its craft districts and its cosmopolitan graves, forced a complete rewrite of the Viking Age narrative. It proved these were not just pirates in longships. They were savvy, networked entrepreneurs who established permanent, planned hubs in a vast commercial circuit that stretched from North America to the Caspian Sea. The town's very existence, protected by its ring fort and organized for production and trade, revealed a society with complex social stratification, international diplomacy, and a sophisticated understanding of economics. Birka was the blueprint for the Viking trader, a planned port that showed the raid was just one tool in a much larger and far more interesting toolbox of ambition. But the bustling trade networks of Birka connected a world of growing cities, each one a testament to human ingenuity. Yet one civilization in Southeast Asia engineered its capital not just for commerce or defense, but as a colossal machine for capturing the sky itself. For centuries, the story of Angkor was told through its stone. The breathtaking temples of Angkor Wat and the Bayon, with their serene faces gazing over the jungle, defined our image of the Khmer Empire. Archaeologists saw a ceremonial center, a divine capital for god-kings, surrounded by scattered villages. That entire understanding was turned upside down in a single stroke, not by a shovel but by a laser. In the early 2000s, researchers began using LiDAR technology, a method that uses laser pulses from aircraft to digitally strip away the dense forest canopy. What appeared on their screens was not a collection of isolated temples. It was the ghostly, perfect imprint of an immense, low-density metropolis sprawling across nearly 400 square miles. This was not a city of tight streets and crowded houses. It was a vast, engineered landscape, a hydraulic city of staggering complexity. A precise grid of ceremonial avenues and raised earthen roads connected neighborhoods, temple complexes, and administrative centers. But the true genius of the plan was written in water. An intricate, sprawling network of canals, massive reservoirs called barrays, and thousands of community ponds formed an artificial watershed of breathtaking scale. This system was not merely decorative, it was the empire's beating heart. The canals redistributed water across the urban expanse, while the giant reservoirs, some stretching over 5 miles long, captured monsoon rains to see the population through the long dry season. This allowed Angkor to support a population of perhaps 700,000 to 1 million people, making it the most extensive pre-industrial city on Earth. The LiDAR map revealed a civilization that had utterly mastered its environment, creating a managed, aquatic landscape to support intensive rice agriculture and sustain its colossal urban population. For Khmer scholars, this was a paradigm-shattering discovery. It moved the narrative far beyond the spiritual symbolism of the temples. Angkor was now understood as a hydraulic empire, a society whose power, prosperity, and very existence were inextricably tied to the control of water. This new understanding also cast its eventual decline in a tragic new light. The very system that enabled its greatness may have led to its vulnerability. Evidence suggests that over centuries, the massive water network became increasingly difficult to maintain. Shifts in climate, including prolonged droughts interspersed with intense flooding, could have overwhelmed the delicate engineering. The failure of this hydraulic heart, the slow silting of canals, and the breakdown of water management likely played a critical role in the city's gradual unraveling. The blueprint revealed by LiDAR did more than just show us a bigger city. It showed us a civilization's profound pact with nature and the precarious balance upon which even the greatest empires are built. The hydraulic empire of Angkor was a testament to controlling nature, but another society flourished in an environment so harsh that survival itself seemed like a miracle. In the sun-blasted high desert of what is now New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloan people built not just homes but a monumental statement in stone. At the heart of Choco Canyon, the sprawling, crescent-shaped complex of Pueblo Bonito rises from the canyon floor, its blueprint a puzzle that took decades to decipher. This was not a haphazard village that grew over time. Excavations revealed it was a single, colossal architectural project. A D-shaped, multi-story great house containing over 600 rooms arranged in precise, symmetrical blocks around central plazas. Its scale was staggering, with some sections standing 4 and 5 stories high, built with millions of carefully shaped sandstone blocks hauled from distant quarries. But the true purpose of this plan lay in its sacred geometry. At its core were 2 great kivas, massive, circular, subterranean chambers over 50 feet in diameter, used for communal ceremonies that likely united people from across the region. The entire structure was a celestial observatory. Key walls and windows are aligned to capture the precise movements of the sun and moon, marking the solstices and the complex 18.6-year lunar cycle. A single, slender rock slab placed to the north casts a dagger of sunlight that, on the summer solstice, perfectly bisects a spiral petroglyph carved on a distant cliff face. This was architecture as cosmology, a stone calendar built to track time and harmonize human activity with the cosmos. For a long time, the prevailing view of ancestral Puebloans was of scattered, egalitarian groups of subsistence farmers, simply trying to eke out a living in a difficult land. The meticulously planned, labor-intensive blueprint of Pueblo Bonito shattered that assumption. Constructing it required a highly organized society capable of mobilizing and sustaining a large workforce, managing long-distance trade for timber and exotic goods like macaw feathers and seashells, and possessing advanced astronomical knowledge. The clear hierarchy in its layout, with vast storage rooms, refined living quarters, and monumental ceremonial spaces, pointed to a structured, possibly theocratic society where spiritual leaders held significant sway, coordinating labor and ceremony for the benefit of the wider community. This great house was not just a dwelling, it was the spiritual and economic heart of a vast cultural network, a planned ceremonial center that transformed our understanding of early North American societies from simple survivalists to sophisticated architects of both stone and society. The stone calendars of Choco Canyon spoke of a society in harmony with the cosmos, but another city's walls were built to project power across an earthly kingdom. Rising from the grassy highveld of southern Africa, the stone ruins of Great Zimbabwe have captivated and confused outsiders for centuries. When European explorers first encountered these monumental, dry stone walls in the late 19th century, they refused to believe they were of local origin. The prevailing, racially biased theory insisted such sophistication must have come from outsiders, perhaps Phoenicians or Arabs. It was only when archaeologists meticulously mapped the entire site that the truth, written in the very layout of the city, became undeniable. The plan of Great Zimbabwe is a masterpiece of spatial hierarchy, built without mortar over centuries between the 11th and 15th. Its heart is the hill complex, a series of enclosures perched on a granite copy, likely the spiritual and earliest royal center. Below it lies the breathtaking Great Enclosure, a vast oval circuit wall over 30 feet high and 800 feet long, made from precisely cut granite blocks. Within this outer wall, a smaller, conical tower and a series of narrow, labyrinthine passages create a private, ritual space. Further out, stretching across the valley, are the so-called valley ruins, a sprawling collection of smaller stone enclosures. This tripartite plan was a direct map of social order. The hill complex served as the secluded ceremonial and possibly royal residence. The monumental Great Enclosure, with its impressive walls and iconic tower, was almost certainly the royal palace proper, a symbol of supreme secular power and wealth. The countless smaller stone homesteads in the valley housed the artisans, traders, and administrators who served the court. The entire city was a functioning capital, home to perhaps 18,000 people, controlling trade in gold, ivory, and copper that reached ports on the Swahili coast. For archaeology, this clear, stratified blueprint was the final, irrefutable evidence needed to dismantle the colonial myth. The plan proved development was continuous and indigenous. The architecture evolved from simpler, earlier stone building techniques in the region. The settlement grew organically from the hilltop down into the valley, reflecting the expansion of a homegrown kingdom. There was no sudden foreign influence, just the steady, brilliant rise of a powerful Shona state. The city's layout did more than house a society. It displayed its principles, separating sacred, royal, and commoner spaces within a unified stone landscape, forever changing our understanding of Africa's medieval past. Great Zimbabwe's stone walls mapped a kingdom's hierarchy, but in the crowded heart of medieval Europe, an entirely different kind of urban blueprint was being drawn, not by kings but by feuding families. While royal capitals like Paris or London grew around a single castle or cathedral, the Italian city of Bologna developed a unique and chaotic signature in its skyline. Excavations and surviving documents reveal a plan that was not imposed from above, but erupted from below, creating an organic maze of power and prestige. By the 12th and 13th centuries, the cityscape was dominated by as many as 100 towering stone structures, some rising nearly 100 meters high. These were not civic monuments or defensive bastions. They were private family fortresses known as tower houses, built by rival noble clans in a relentless architectural arms race. The city plan became a vertical chessboard, with each great family clustering its homes, workshops, and lesser towers around its central stronghold, creating dense, inward-facing neighborhood enclaves. The ground level of this urban forest was just as innovative. To connect these fortified compounds and claim public space for private use, families began constructing sheltered walkways, extending the upper stories of their buildings over the streets below. This practice, formalized by city statute in 1288, gave birth to Bologna's iconic porticos, miles of covered, column-lined arcades that turned the city's streets into a continuous, sheltered public room. This dual blueprint of vertical rivalry and horizontal connection forced a major rethink of medieval urbanism. Archaeologists had long viewed medieval cities as either planned royal foundations or chaotic, unsanitary warrens. Bologna's excavated foundations presented a third model, a sophisticated organic city. Its form was driven by intense clan competition, yet this very rivalry produced a remarkable civic innovation, the portico, which benefited the entire community. The city's plan was a physical record of social conflict being channeled over centuries, into a unique urban fabric that balanced private fortification with public convenience, showing how urban beauty could sometimes be born not from order but from strife. The fierce clan rivalries of Bologna shaped a city of stone, but on the vast Eurasian steppe, a different kind of power was building capitals of astonishing tolerance. For centuries, the Mongol Empire was remembered for the thunder of its cavalry and the swift conquest of cities, its name synonymous with nomadic mobility and destruction. This one-dimensional view was permanently altered when Soviet archaeologists began to peel back the grasslands along the Volga River. There, they uncovered the sprawling, meticulously ordered plan of Saray Berke, a capital of the Golden Horde, and it told a story nobody expected. This was no temporary camp of yurts. It was a vast, permanent metropolis built on a strict rectangular grid that stretched for miles along the riverbank. Wide, straight streets divided the city into specialized districts, each with a clear purpose. One entire sector was dedicated to crafts and industry, with the foundations of hundreds of workshops for potters, glassblowers, jewelers, and metalworkers. Another district housed the spacious compounds of administrators and nobility. Most revealing of all were the distinct religious quarters. The foundations of mosques with their oriented prayer niches stood alongside the remains of Christian churches, Buddhist temples, and even small shrines. This was a deliberately pluralistic urban blueprint. The city's layout proved the Mongol administration did not just conquer diverse populations. It actively designed spaces for them to thrive side by side, turning religious and ethnic diversity into an economic engine. Saray Berke was a colossal hub on the Silk Road, and its plan was engineered for production and exchange. Canals brought fresh water to the industrial sectors, and vast warehouse districts stored goods from across the empire, from Chinese silks to Russian furs. The discovery of this lost grid forced a seismic shift in historical understanding. It moved the narrative far beyond the stereotype of the Mongols as mere destroyers. Here was concrete evidence they were also sophisticated state builders who fostered planned, cosmopolitan cities as centers of taxed commerce and manufacturing. This capital on the Volga showed the Golden Horde's power was sustained not just by the bow, but by the loom, the kiln, and the meticulous urban plan that organized them all. The cosmopolitan grid of Saray Berke revealed an empire of commerce, but one civilization built its cities not on open plains, but on the very bones of the earth. High in the Peruvian Andes, the plan of Machu Picchu is a breathtaking dialogue between human genius and mountain stone. While its silhouette is iconic, the true revelation lies in how its precise layout was not imposed upon the landscape, but woven into it. Every structure, from the royal residences to the humble storehouses, follows the natural contours of the ridge, its stonework merging with the granite outcrops as if growing from the mountain itself. This was no accident. The city is divided into clear, intentional sectors: agricultural, urban, and sacred, each serving a distinct purpose within a single, unified design. Vast, curved terraces cascade down the slopes, not just preventing erosion but creating microclimates for growing crops at altitude. A sophisticated network of stone channels still carries fresh spring water through fountains and ceremonial baths, demonstrating an intimate understanding of hydrology. The sacred sector, with its Teotihuacan stone pillar and temple of the sun, is positioned to capture the solstice sunrises and track celestial events, anchoring the city to the cosmos. For archaeologists, this meticulous plan was the key to unlocking the Inca mindset. It proved their urban philosophy was one of harmonious integration, or tinkai, a meeting of complementary forces. The state provided the ultimate template, with standardized architectural styles and precise, trapezoidal doorways and niches seen across the empire, but local execution was always in conversation with the specific terrain. Machu Picchu's blueprint, therefore, became a Rosetta Stone. By understanding how this royal estate perfectly blended ritual, agriculture, and administration with the mountain's form, researchers could look at the scant foundations of other, less preserved Inca settlements and finally read their intent. They could see the ghostly outlines of terraces on distant hillsides or the alignment of a lone wall with a sunrise and recognize not a scattered village, but a deliberate, state-sanctioned act of world-building, where the city plan was a sacred contract between the empire and the living landscape it revered. While the Incas built in harmony with mountain peaks, a different kind of power was rising from the flat, muddy shores of the Baltic Sea. At the mouth of the Trav River, the city of Lübeck was not shaped by kings or emperors, but by the relentless logic of trade. Its excavated foundations reveal the quintessential blueprint of the medieval merchant, a plan so successful it was copied like a franchise across northern Europe. Lübeck's form was a statement of pragmatic defense and economic focus. The entire city was contained within a tight oval of fortified walls and water, a deliberate island of security in a contested landscape. At its highest point, not by a castle but by the bustling marketplace, rose the twin spires of St. Mary's Church. This was no accident. The church, built by the merchants themselves, physically and symbolically anchored the city's commercial heart. From this central square, a web of narrow streets fanned out towards the river, each one specializing in a different craft. The names of these lanes, preserved for centuries, tell the story: Glockengisserstrasse for bell founders and Der Untertre for shipwrights. The lifeblood of the city, however, flowed along the riverbank itself. Here, archaeologists uncovered the foundations of long, gabled warehouses with massive cellars, built not for grain or cloth but for white gold. This was the salt quarter, salt, essential for preserving the herring that fueled the Baltic economy, was Lübeck's primary commodity. The very layout of the city, from its secure walls to its specialized districts and riverside storehouses, was a machine for receiving, processing, and exporting this vital good. For historians, Lübeck's preserved plan was a master key. It showed that the Hanseatic League was not just a loose alliance of merchants, but a civilization with its own urban template. As the League's influence grew, this Lübeck model was meticulously reproduced in new foundations from Tallinn to Gdansk. These daughter cities, often called Tochterstädte, shared the same core features: the oval wall, the central market church, the artisan quarters, the strategic waterfront warehouses. This was planned commercial urbanism on a continental scale. The discovery of these identical blueprints forced a dramatic revision. It proved the Hanseatic League operated with a corporate vision as coherent as any empire's, exporting not just goods, but an entire, repeatable model for a successful trading city. Lübeck's foundations are the archetype, the original blueprint for a world where civic power was measured not in acres of land, but in cubic feet of warehouse space and the depth of a harbor channel. The merchant blueprint of Lübeck was a model of pragmatic trade, but high on the Altiplano of the Andes, a city was built as a portal to the gods themselves. Near the shores of Lake Titicaca, at a dizzying altitude of over 12,000 feet, the sprawling ceremonial center of Tiwanaku presents a plan of monumental stone and sacred geometry. Its layout is a profound statement of spiritual power, centered not on palaces or markets, but on a sequence of awe-inspiring, sunken ceremonial courts. The most famous, the Kalasasaya, is a massive rectangular platform entered through a monolithic gateway carved from a single block of stone. Within this walled precinct, another masterpiece of engineering awaits, the semi-subterranean temple. This is a perfectly square court dug deep into the earth, its walls lined with hundreds of carved stone heads, each one gazing inward with a unique, solemn expression. At the heart of the complex looms the Akapana, a colossal, terraced platform mound shaped like a stepped cross, its interior laced with intricate stone drains that channeled water in a carefully orchestrated flow, likely mirroring the sacred mountains that surround the plateau. The entire city was a machine for ritual. Its precise orientation, just a few degrees off the cardinal points, aligns key structures with the solstice sunrises and sunsets, and with the cyclical rise of certain stars. The famous Sun Gate, carved with the intricate figure of a radiating deity, likely served as a celestial calendar, marking the agricultural and ceremonial year. For a long time, European scholars dismissed Tiwanaku as a collection of impressive ruins built by a small, local culture. The sheer scale and sophistication of its ceremonial plan told a different story. The discovery of its vast, coordinated layout, with specialized areas for mass pilgrimage, elite residence, and craft production, proved this was the beating heart of a vast high-altitude empire that flourished for centuries before the Inca. Its influence stretched across the southern Andes, with outposts and colonies adopting its iconic architectural styles and religious symbols. This was not just a city, it was a theocratic capital, a destination for pilgrims who would descend into its sunken courts to participate in rituals that connected the community with the ancestors and the cosmos. The blueprint of Tiwanaku forced a complete rewrite of Andean history. It revealed a powerful, innovative civilization that mastered stonework and astronomy to create an urban experience focused entirely on collective ceremony and cosmological order, proving that long before the Inca engineered their mountain estates, the Altiplano was home to an empire whose greatest monument was a sacred landscape designed to touch the heavens. The sacred geometry of Tiwanaku was a city built for the sky, but some of the most resilient urban plans were carved not upward, but directly into the earth itself. In the sun-baked region of Basilicata, Italy, the ancient settlement of Matera clings to the steep walls of a deep ravine. Its layout, known as the Sassi, is not a collection of built structures, but a breathtaking labyrinth of caves, a city literally hollowed out of the soft limestone rock over millennia. From a distance, it appears as a cascading, chaotic jumble of dwellings spilling down the cliff face. But to walk its narrow, winding paths is to navigate a masterclass in organic, troglodytic urbanism. This was not a planned city with streets and squares. It was a living, breathing adaptation, a complex three-dimensional network of over 1,500 cave homes, rock-cut churches, communal courtyards, and vast underground cisterns, all connected by a tortuous web of staircases, tunnels, and terraced gardens. Each cave was expanded and refined by generations, with facades built onto the natural openings, creating a unique architectural hybrid of grotto and building. The true genius of the plan, however, lay hidden beneath the surface. The entire community was engineered around capturing and storing every precious drop of water. A sophisticated system of channels carved into the rock directed rainwater from rooftops and streets into massive, bell-shaped cisterns excavated deep within the limestone. These reservoirs provided a vital, shared resource that sustained the population through long dry seasons, turning a seemingly inhospitable landscape into a viable home. For centuries, outsiders viewed the Sassi as a primitive slum, a place of hardship. But when archaeologists and urban historians began to truly map its intricate, self-sufficient layout in the latter 20th century, they were forced into a dramatic re-evaluation. This was not a failed city. It was a stunningly successful one, continuously inhabited for over 9,000 years. Its organic plan demonstrated a profound collective intelligence, a society that achieved a perfect, sustainable symbiosis with its environment. Every element of its design, from the south-facing caves that captured winter sun to the shared cisterns, and the vertical organization that placed stables above living quarters for warmth, was a direct response to geography and extreme resource scarcity. This cave city shattered the classical definition of urbanism. It proved a city does not require grand avenues, monumental walls, or even conventionally built houses. A city can be a negative space, a community defined by what it carved away, a masterpiece of subtraction that offered a powerful, enduring blueprint for living in balance with a challenging world. But the resilient, earth-carved city of Matara represents one extreme of urban adaptation. On the opposite side of the world, another civilization achieved a different kind of mastery, building a capital so vast and meticulously ordered it seemed to contain an entire cosmos within its walls. In the rocky heart of South India, the ruins of Vijayanagara sprawl across a dramatic landscape of granite boulders and the Tungabhadra River. For centuries, these ruins were known to locals as Hampi, a place of pilgrimage and fragmented memory. It was only when archaeologists began to map the site in earnest that the ghost of a colossal, planned metropolis emerged from the dust. This was not an organic tangle of streets, but a breathtakingly deliberate blueprint for imperial power. The city was divided into distinct, walled urban quarters, each with a specialized purpose, connected by a network of broad, processional streets and an advanced system of aqueducts and tanks that managed water across the arid terrain. At its sacred core lay the grand temple complex, a spiritual nucleus adorned with towering gopurams and pillared halls. Just to the south, separated yet connected, was the royal center, a fortified enclave containing the palaces of the king, administrative buildings, and the famed Lotus Mahal and elephant stables. Radiating out from this dual heart were the distinct quarters for the city's lifeblood. There was a dedicated Islamic quarter with its own mosques and tombs, housing foreign traders and skilled cavalrymen who served the empire. Separate districts existed for jewelers, weavers, potters, and oil merchants, their layouts facilitating both production and trade. The entire plan was a masterclass in integration. Wide ceremonial roads doubled as military parade routes. The massive irrigation tanks provided water for both ritual purification in the temples and for the city's agriculture. The strategic placement of the royal center allowed the king to oversee both the sacred precinct and the military cantonments. For historians of medieval India, this excavated grid was a revelation that overturned a persistent colonial-era narrative. The prevailing view had been that post-classical Indian kingdoms were politically fragmented and their cities chaotic and unplanned. Vijayanagara's meticulous zoning shattered that assumption. Here was evidence of a centralized, sophisticated state that could conceive and execute an urban plan of staggering scale and complexity, rivaling the great capitals of contemporary Asia. It revealed a society that did not merely tolerate diversity but actively planned for it, zoning space for different communities and professions within a unified imperial vision. This was not just a royal capital. It was a machine for governance, devotion, and commerce, a planned metropolis whose very layout proved the Vijayanagara Empire was a pinnacle of administrative genius and cosmopolitan ambition. The cosmopolitan grid of Vijayanagara showed an empire's command over land, but across the Indian Ocean, another city drew its power from the sea itself. On a small island just off the coast of modern Tanzania, the ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani whisper a story of coral stone and monsoon winds. Its excavated plan is a masterclass in maritime urbanism, a layout where every building faced the harbor, the source of its incredible wealth. At the city's heart stood the Great Mosque, one of the earliest in sub-Saharan Africa. Its domed roof and rows of coral pillars expanded over centuries to accommodate a growing, devout population. Just inland, the commercial pulse of the city beat within vast, vaulted warehouses where goods from across the globe were stored. Ivory from the African interior, gold from Great Zimbabwe, and fragrant timber were traded for Chinese celadon porcelain, Persian glass, and Indian cotton. But the most astonishing structure was the Husuni Kubwa, a sprawling palace complex built on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Its plan was a revelation of luxury and administration, featuring over 100 rooms, a grand octagonal bathing pool, and a series of courtyards designed to catch the sea breeze. This was not a fortified castle, but an open, airy seat of government meant to impress foreign merchants and manage a commercial empire. Surrounding these grand civic structures were the domestic quarters, neighborhoods of well-built stone houses with their own enclosed courtyards and intricate plasterwork, homes for the city's prosperous merchants and skilled craftsmen. For a long time, European narratives portrayed the East African coast as a passive recipient of culture, a series of outposts controlled by Arab traders. The meticulous, sophisticated plan of Kilwa, with its distinct zoning for commerce, governance, worship, and domestic life, completely dismantled that outdated view. Here was irrefutable evidence of powerful, autonomous city-states, governed by local Swahili sultans who had converted to Islam and integrated it into a distinctly African cultural fabric. Their stone architecture was not an imported style, but a brilliant local innovation, using fossilized coral cut from the reef and timber from mangrove forests to create a unique and enduring aesthetic. The city's entire layout, from its commanding palace to its bustling port, proved these were not colonial footholds, but sovereign, sophisticated nodes in a vast Indian Ocean network, centers of learning, faith, and economic might that flourished for centuries on their own terms. From the coral palaces of Kilwa, we travel to the river deltas of Southeast Asia, where a kingdom built its capital as a cosmic diagram in water and stone. The city of Ayutthaya, founded in 1351, was not merely a political capital, it was a living mandala. Its entire plan was a breathtaking architectural expression of Hindu-Buddhist cosmology, designed to manifest celestial order on Earth. The city was constructed on a strategic island at the confluence of three rivers, a natural moat that defined its outermost ring. From this watery boundary, the plan unfolded inward with perfect symmetry. Concentric rings of canals and earthen walls radiated from the absolute center, where the royal palace and the most sacred temple, Wat Phra Si Sanfit, stood side by side. Major roads and canals sliced through these rings like spokes on a wheel, creating a radial grid that channeled all movement toward the spiritual and political heart. This was a city you could read like a map of the universe. The innermost ring surrounding the palace and temple mount was the domain of the god-king, the Devaraja, whose authority was considered divine. The next ring outward housed the nobility, high-ranking officials, and the military elite. Beyond them lived the merchants, artisans, and free citizens, while the outermost areas, near the protective walls and water, were for common laborers and newcomers. Your physical address was a direct reflection of your social and spiritual status within the kingdom. For archaeologists and historians, uncovering this precise, concentric blueprint was a revelation of statecraft. It proved that Ayutthaya's rulers were not just administrators, but master ideologues who used urban planning as their primary tool. The city's form was a constant, visible reminder of the cosmic hierarchy, reinforcing the king's central, godlike role with every canal crossed and every road traveled. This deliberate design also had profound practical implications. The intricate canal network served as transportation arteries, defensive barriers, and sources of water for agriculture and daily life, turning the entire city into a resilient hydraulic engine. The discovery of this mandala plan forced a major shift in understanding Southeast Asian kingdoms. It moved the narrative beyond seeing them as merely powerful states, revealing them as sophisticated entities that physically built their guiding philosophies into the landscape. Ayutthaya's blueprint showed that its power was sustained not only by armies and trade, but by an immersive, architectural ideology that shaped the daily reality and world view of every single person within its walls. Yet the mandala of Ayutthaya was a blueprint for a kingdom in harmony with its own cosmology. On a lonely stretch of the South Carolina coast, a very different kind of plan was drawn, one born not from spiritual certainty, but from desperate ambition. In 1562, a small band of French Huguenots landed and began to build Charlesfort, a foothold for France in the New World. Their settlement lasted less than a single year, but the ghostly outline they left in the soil, painstakingly uncovered by archaeologists centuries later, tells a profound story of colonial aspiration and failure. The plan was a perfect miniature star. This was a classic trace Italian, a Renaissance star fort, designed with geometric precision to deflect cannon fire with its angled bastions. It was the cutting edge of European military engineering, a tiny piece of theoretical perfection transplanted onto an unfamiliar continent. Within its neat, geometric boundaries, the colonists built a central courtyard, a storehouse, and a few simple dwellings, attempting to impose a rigid, old-world order on a vast new landscape. But the blueprint itself was the problem. This sophisticated fort was designed for a European war zone, with reliable supply lines and a familiar climate. In the dense forests and humid summers of the Carolina coast, it was an absurd mismatch. The plan made no provision for sustainable agriculture in the unfamiliar soil, for diplomacy with the local Kusabo people whose territory they occupied, or for the sheer psychological isolation of their position. The colonists, relying on a promised resupply ship that never came, soon faced hunger and internal strife. Within months, their grand military design was abandoned, the survivors attempting a desperate and disastrous sea voyage back to Europe. For historians, the excavated star shape of Charlesfort is a poignant archaeological parable. It illustrates with perfect clarity the fatal gap between European theoretical planning and New World reality. The colonists arrived with a blueprint for defense, but they needed a plan for survival. This tiny, failed star fort became a pattern repeated across countless early colonial ventures, from Roanoke to early Jamestown. Ambitious geometric plans drawn in distant capitals consistently collapsed when confronted with environmental hardship, lack of local knowledge, and the complex realities of indigenous landscapes. Charlesfort's brief existence forces us to see these early colonies not as inevitable successes, but as high-stakes experiments where a beautifully drawn map was often the first casualty of a harsh and unforgiving world. While the star fort of Charlesfort failed to impose its order, another civilization chose to find safety not by building up, but by digging down. Deep within the soft volcanic rock of Turkey's Cappadocia region, the underground city of Derinkuyu descends like an inverted skyscraper, a labyrinth of survival carved into the earth. Its excavated plan is not a single shelter, but a complete subterranean metropolis, capable of housing an estimated 20,000 people along with their livestock and supplies for months at a time. The scale is almost impossible to grasp from the surface. This city plunges over 200 feet deep, organized across at least 8 distinct, interconnected levels. Its layout reveals a society that had perfected the art of vanishing. Long, sloping entrance tunnels could be sealed from the inside with massive, circular stone doors, each weighing up to half a ton and rolling into place like millstones to block invaders. Once sealed, the city became a self-contained world. A brilliant ventilation system of over 50 vertical shafts, some stretching from the deepest chambers all the way to the surface, provided a constant flow of fresh air, preventing stagnation and allowing for fires to be lit in kitchens and forges. Deep wells tapped into the groundwater far below, securing a vital water supply independent of the world above. The plan was meticulously zoned for long-term habitation. There were stables for animals on the upper levels, their waste carefully managed. Communal kitchens, wineries, and oil presses provided sustenance. Designated areas served as places of worship, with simple crosses carved into the walls of chapels. There were even communal rooms for gathering and schooling, and thousands of individual family quarters, small cells carved into the rock, offering privacy within the collective refuge. For archaeologists, uncovering this vast, planned underworld forced a dramatic rethink of Byzantine-era life in Anatolia. The prevailing view had been of communities huddling behind castle walls or fleeing to high ground when raiders approached. Derinkuyu presented a far more radical and sophisticated strategy. This was not a temporary bolt hole. It was a parallel city, a planned alternative reality built for endurance. Its existence proved that entire urban populations could, and did, choose to literally disappear from the landscape for extended periods, waiting out threats in remarkable comfort and order. This changed our understanding of community defense from a matter of repelling attacks at the gate to one of strategic disappearance and patient resilience. The blueprint of Derinkuyu reveals a civilization that looked at the soft stone beneath its feet and saw not just a geological feature, but the ultimate blueprint for survival, a hidden city where life could continue quietly and stubbornly, even when the world above fell silent. The hidden cities beneath our feet reveal a profound instinct for survival, but another civilization chose to build its sanctuary in plain sight, crowning a rock that seemed to touch the clouds. Sigiriya, the Lion Rock of Sri Lanka, is famous for its breathtaking fortress palace perched 200 meters above the forest. For centuries, that dramatic summit captured all the attention, a seemingly isolated marvel of 5th century audacity. Yet when archaeologists finally turned their gaze downward, they uncovered a far greater wonder, a sprawling, utopian garden city laid out at the rock's base with a precision that rivals any Renaissance plan. This was not a defensive afterthought. It was the true heart of King Cassioppa's capital, a complete, integrated blueprint where art, nature, and urban order were fused into a single visionary design. The plan unfolds in 3 magnificent concentric zones, each a testament to a different facet of royal power. At the outermost ring, a vast, grid-like outer settlement housed the city's administrators, soldiers, and artisans, its orderly streets suggesting a population governed with meticulous control. Moving inward, the landscape transforms into the famous water gardens, a symphony in stone and hydraulics. Here, symmetry reigns supreme. A long, central canal is flanked by identical island pavilions, each surrounded by its own moat. Fountains, powered entirely by gravity and pressure from elevated reservoirs, once played in sunken pools, their stone conduits still functional after 1,500 years. This was a liquid playground of stunning beauty, but also a display of absolute technical mastery over the environment. The innermost precinct, directly beneath the shadow of the rock, contained the royal palace complex and the elaborate boulder gardens. Here, architecture and geology become one. Pleasure pavilions and audience halls were built amongst and around massive natural boulders, connected by winding pathways and limestone staircases. The entire complex was a deliberate stage set, designed to awe visitors as they progressed toward the ultimate ascent up the rock face itself. The plan was a complete sensory and spiritual journey, moving from the ordered grid of daily life through the refreshing symmetry of the water gardens into the mystical fusion of stone and building, culminating in the celestial palace in the sky. This holistic blueprint forced a dramatic reassessment of early medieval Sri Lanka. Before its full excavation, Sigiriya was categorized as a desperate fortress, built by a usurper king fleeing his enemies. The garden city below tells a completely different story. This was not a defensive stronghold, but a confident, planned capital of art and technology. It reveals King Cassioppa not as a paranoid fugitive, but as a sophisticated monarch and patron who wielded advanced hydraulic engineering and landscape architecture as tools of statecraft. The city's synthesis of utopian aesthetics, urban planning, and environmental control presents a unique model, a proto-industrial city where beauty and function, the monumental and the mundane, were woven into a single, breathtaking tapestry. It stands as a powerful reminder that the most enduring blueprints are those that seek not just to house a population, but to elevate the human spirit itself. Even utopian gardens, however, cannot escape the shifting tides of history. Our final city blueprint belongs to a place that rose from the desert to become a legend, its very layout a perfect portrait of a world connected. In the heart of the Syrian desert, the oasis of Palmyra was not just a stop on the map, it was a deliberate creation, a grand caravanserai turned into a monumental city. Its excavated plan reveals a stunning fusion, a unique architectural language spoken in stone. The city's spine was its grand colonnaded street, over 1 kilometer long, stretching from the Temple of Bel to the monumental funerary gate. This was not a simple road, it was a covered, shaded promenade, lined with hundreds of towering columns, each one bearing a bracket that once held the statue of a wealthy merchant or caravan leader. This street was a public hall of fame, a testament to the city's commercial elite. Branching off this magnificent artery were side streets, agoras for public commerce and debate, a theater for entertainment, and even a distinct Senate building where local notables governed. But the city's plan extended beyond the realm of the living. On the surrounding limestone ridges stood the iconic tomb towers, multi-story family mausoleums that housed generations of Pomerans in elaborate, portrait-adorned chambers. This was a city that planned for eternity as carefully as it planned for trade. Every element of this layout tells a story of synthesis. The colonnaded street and Senate were pure Greco-Roman urban vocabulary. The interior designs of the temples and the elaborate frontal facades of the tomb towers showed strong Persian influence. Underlying it all was the local Arab and Amorite tradition, the deep knowledge of the desert and the tribal social structures that made the caravan logistics possible. For archaeologists, Palmyra's blueprint was the ultimate case study in ancient globalization. It proved that cultural fusion was not merely an abstract idea, but could be physically built into the very fabric of a city. The plan illustrated with perfect clarity how a community could adopt the administrative and architectural forms of powerful empires to the east and west, remixing them into something entirely their own to serve a single, magnificent purpose, facilitating trade between Rome and Parthia, between the Mediterranean and the Silk Road. This was a planned cosmopolitan machine where a merchant from Rome, a banker from Persia, and a camel driver from a local tribe could all find their place within a single, harmonious urban design. The city's tragic modern loss makes its recovered blueprint all the more vital. That plan remains an indelible map, not just of streets and buildings, but of a brilliant hybrid identity. It stands as a permanent lesson in how human connection, across vast distances and cultures, can be translated into stone, creating a unique and glorious urban form that served as a crossroads for the entire ancient world. Each of these 25 blueprints began as a line in the soil, a whisper from the past that dared to contradict the story we thought we knew. They prove that the most honest history book is not always a written text, but a city plan etched into the earth itself. For centuries, our understanding of civilizations was built on fragments, on the grand monuments that survived and the chronicles written by the victors. These narratives created assumptions that early cities were chaotic, that empires required god-kings, that cultural progress flowed in one direction. Yet, time and again, the meticulous map of a buried capital has risen to challenge those very ideas. A perfect circle in Baghdad rewrote the origins of Islamic urbanism. A geometric star fort in Carolina exposed the folly of colonial theory. The ghostly grid of a hydraulic metropolis in Cambodia revealed an empire's true engine was water, not stone. These are not just layouts, they are primary documents written in the language of streets and walls. Collectively, they paint a breathtaking mural of human ingenuity. There is no single path to civilization, no universal blueprint for a city. Our journey has shown a stunning diversity, from the rooftop labyrinth of Çatalhöyük to the imperial grid of Chang'an, from the cosmic stone calendar of Choco Canyon to the merchant machine of Lübeck. We have seen cities designed for the heavens, for trade, for ceremony, for disappearance, and for absolute control. Each discovery was a paradigm shift, a moment when archaeologists had to set aside old textbooks and confront a new, more complex, and often more brilliant reality. These plans forced us to see past the stereotype of the Viking raider to the savvy trader of Birka, to look beyond the pyramid builders of Egypt and recognize the state planners of Kahun, to understand that the power of the Mongols was cemented in the cosmopolitan workshops of Saray Berke, not just on the battlefield. This is the enduring lesson. The ground beneath our feet is still a vast, unread archive. For every city plan we have recovered, countless others lie dormant, waiting for the careful sweep of a trowel or the silent pulse of a laser from above. Each holds the potential to dismantle another assumption, to introduce us to a forgotten way of life, a different answer to the eternal question of how to live together. What future excavation will next rewrite the story? What lost blueprint waiting in a desert or beneath a forest will challenge what we think we know about resilience, community, or innovation? The search for these buried maps continues, and with each one we recover not just a city, but a chapter of our shared human experiment. If you want to join these explorations of historical mysteries, be sure to subscribe.